Well, good morning, everyone. It's exciting to be under the bright lights, I will say. Wanted to welcome you all to our first session of the two-day conference, and a big thank you to the Social Innovation Summit team for what is going to be a phenomenal 2 days. I know these guys have really put on a great show. The session is called Corporate Innovations in ESG, and we deliberately kept the topic really broad, especially given the recent news cycle from the variations in viruses to the shocking mass shootings across the country, and very recently the growing anti-ESG sentiment that has negated years of work that companies have put in gathering data, reporting on it, building teams, engaging employees, meeting investor demands and customer satisfaction needs, right? And so much more. And at Chief Executives for Corporate Purpose, we have been advising companies on their sustainable business journeys from the late 90s, like long before ESG and CSR were even a part of the common lexicon. So, and I think the reason for that is we believe that companies can and should be a force for good. And companies, to steal Alan Murray's phrase, Alan Murray, the CEO of Fortune, are human-centered organizations with values. And that's what we're going to focus our conversation on today, right? The S in ESG, the people, because that's what makes up organizations. So Eric, I'm going to start with you first. We know that employees are the #1 stakeholder, right? And US News and World Report is focused on high quality journalism. Your employees work to uphold the First Amendment and the freedom of speech. So how do you communicate these values to your employees, especially through these turbulent times, right, that we're living through? And why do you think employees want to work for a purposeful company?
Great. Well, first of all, thank you for including me, and it's great to be back at a conference. I thought I'd first share with you how I got here. So a few weeks ago, Nandika called me up and said, Eric, do you believe in the First Amendment? I said, of course I believe in the First Amendment. I mean, after all, I run a media company. I was trained as a lawyer. I believe in the Constitution. Of course I believe in the First Amendment. And then she asked me, she said, do you believe in freedom of speech? Do you believe in free speech? I said, of course I believe in free speech. I mean, free speech is the basic tenet of the First Amendment, so of course I believe in free speech. So she said to me, she goes, great. Now that we've negotiated your fee for being on a panel, let's discuss which panel you'll be on. So Jim, I hope you have a better booking agent than I do. But in all seriousness, for us at US News, we're a mission-driven company. What we do is mission-driven. We are focused every day on ensuring that we help consumers make the right decisions in their lives. In a world where you are inundated with information, where things are become much more complicated, much more complex, we try and simplify things so that consumers can make the right decisions. And we do it, and we know this is why our writers want to be at the company, why people want to be a part of what we do, because we deliver quality, we communicate that, we do that every single day. We make sure that we have reliable information, that we know that every day our 500 million customers can trust what we do. Now, if we take the rankings, for example, which in many companies it's a gimmick, in ours, these are filled with data. We spend a lot of time going through the rankings because it's our way of taking complex information and simplifying it for our users. But the reality is that without rankings, without knowing how you're doing, without being able to measure, and you do this all the time, without knowing, you don't know how to improve. So for us, there's a degree of accountability. There's responsibility in terms of what we are doing every single day. Now, we communicate that every day to our employees. We reinforce the values that are important to us, but we also reinforce that by what we do. We make sure, for example, that when we are launching one of our well-known rankings on best hospitals or best colleges, we make sure to check and double-check and triple-check because we know that our brand is on the line every single day. And our employees want to know that we don't just speak, but we also do. And that's critical because too often we say things that are not backed up with the real promise of delivery. And then lastly, I'll just say that in terms of our content, we also make sure that there are areas in which we focus on real purpose-driven information. So later this month, we're going to launch a section called Healthiest Communities. And that is one in which we're really evaluating health equity in America. And we give counties around this country the ability to measure how they're doing, learn from other counties, because we know that your health care is not dependent upon your genetic code. It's actually more important and more dependent upon your zip code. And so we do a lot of this work to make sure that our employees know, our customers know, our partners know that we care about the purpose and the mission of what we do. So I'll stop there and just say thank you again for including me this morning.
Thank you. And actually just building on that, because it is, you know, and Jim, for you, I think it's important for us, especially in this world of constant churn that we're living in, and the new sort of hybrid model of work that we've developed. What is Gallup learning about this return to work, and will they come back? Will employees come back?
Well, Nandika, thank you. I'm having a total out-of-body experience. I don't know about everybody else, I haven't been in a room full of hundreds of people for so long, but it feels great. If all of a sudden I get lost, that's because I'm enjoying this moment so much. But thank you for having me. I think the S in ESG is suddenly much more important than anybody knew it would be. Our founder, Dr. George Gallup, was an academic, a thinker. He makes that list, the real good list, Eric, of the Atlantic's 100 most influential, you know, with Lincoln and MLK and all that kind of stuff. But he was a guy wandering around. What he was doing is he said, if democracy is about the will of the people, somebody should go find out what that will is. But the S, the will of employees, Gallup has found, has had a seismic shift. There's 125 million full-time employees in America, 125. When we ask them, can you do your work at home, 55% say I can do it from home just fine. That gets you to 70 million. Then when we say to them, how often do you want to come to work? This is so important, nobody knows this. 30% say, I don't ever want to come back again. It's not 2, it's not 3, it's 30 friggin %. 10% say they want to come back like normal, 5 days. They really mean 4, because we've already lost Friday. I don't want to hear people are coming in on Friday. We lost that. I say I'm coming in on Fridays and I don't. But then 60% of them said I want a hybrid, and we pushed them. We said, what is a hybrid to you? To oversimplify, it's 2 days. I'm not being sarcastic or cynical or anything. I'm going to say it's between 1.5 and 1 3/4. You get the point? 90% of employees have a totally changed will because of COVID. 90% don't want to come back, period, full stop. I admire Jamie Dimon, come back or you're fired, that's what he said. The guy at Morgan Stanley, I really like Elon Musk. I never met him, but I think kids dream like he does. But he said, if you don't come back full time, go pretend to work somewhere else. And then he's buying Twitter, and the Twitter guy said, you don't ever have to come back at all. Google said, you see what I mean? And so the leadership doesn't know what's going on because they're giving them, I think they're misreading the will. But so we said, why don't you want to come back? The number one reason, put an answer in your head. I didn't see this coming. I've had the same job my whole life. 90% of the people are going, I really like it at home. Number one reason is the commute.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it tells you how many people live in big cities too. And the commute takes all the fun out of work. The only thing they hate more than the commute's their boss, usually. So somebody said, well, I know a guy that's got the worst life of all. He has a long commute with his boss. But the second reason is, it's better for my well-being. When I was the age of millennials and stuff, nobody cared about your well-being. Well-being's actually a thing now. But the number 2 answer is it works better for my well-being. We've got to listen to that one. The third one is it works better for my family. But my opinion is that if you shake those up and make them one, they call them, statisticians call them interrelated. That means it's hard to pull them apart. Mm-hmm. But if they were a cocktail, the cocktail would be called My New Freedom. Mm-hmm. Because every morning when I get up, I don't actually have to come in. I think Americans tasted that, but a day before COVID, they had no idea that this whole place could just stop coming in coast to coast, and the business would go on. Gallup's doing this, we're doing better than we've ever done before. I'm gonna go back to our building, which is 3 blocks from here, great big building. It's gonna be me, my chief of staff, and maybe just only 20 people. But it's gonna be very, very hard to get it right. The data's coming in real fast that it's better if we're together. Yeah. There's also a guy called me from, it doesn't matter who he is, but a CEO called me, he goes, Clifton, he goes, you and I are so screwed. And I said, what do you see? And he said, humor doesn't come across these damn things. Yeah.
And actually, I just wanted to build on that, Jim, because I think that's a really very good point, and I was talking to Eric about this. But when we live in this kind of discombobulated work environment, how do you build the next generation of leaders? Yeah. How do you build a culture within a company if 90% of the employees are saying that they want to work from home? So, Eric, what do you have a point of view on that?
So first, I just want to add on to a number of the important points that Jim made. I mean, the S is still important, and we know that employees don't want to come back 5 days a week, 4 days a week, 3, 1.5. So, but we also know that employees are out at clubs at night, going to restaurants. We still drive and demand and want connection. So that's really important. You're not getting that in the office right now. And so that makes it very difficult for culture, and it's going to have a long-term effect. I mean, we're doing quite well as a company, but I worry about the next generation of leaders. I mean, how do you train the next generation? I mean, how do you, the conversations by the water cooler that you have and you learn that's not happening. The ability to read a room, that's not happening. I mean, in fact, there was a study done on how do you make the most effective meeting. One of the attributes to make meetings most effective is that people in the room can read each other's body language in a way that allows for better communication. That's not being done on Zoom. Now, yes, there's efficiency, there's flexibility, all that is really important. For companies, you still want to have the best talent, you still want to build your companies, you want to make work-life balance work well for your employees. But I do worry about the next generation. I do worry about how do you do mentorship? How do you do a lot of these things that help? And by the way, even for next generation, when you go back, and Jim, I'm sure that when you started your career, you made connections early on at the office and from going to meetings that have served you so well over the course of your career. That's not happening as well. So there's a lot of things that are going on. And now, there are so many amazing young leaders around the world that are changing. So, there will be a whole new generation of leaders that will change the world. But I think that there is a lot of stuff missing. Last thing I'll just say on Elon Musk, I just thought it was somewhat amusing that his tweet about having everybody come back to the office was sent from the south of France. But, I won't go there, so.
Yeah, and actually, I just read a recent report and that talked about it's especially when you're onboarding new people into an organization. Those are the people who lose out the most in terms of building the relationship, getting to know the leadership within a company. For those who've been in the company and then for the pandemic had to go off and be on Zoom, it was still okay. But for the new people, it's really been a challenge. And I think that's kind of what companies are going to have to grapple with, like figuring out how to build that community on Zoom. But I mean, just to end, just a question for both of you actually, and Jim, if you want to take this one first. Given the pandemic and the last 2.5 years and everything that's happened in those 2 years, what has has your personal and or worldview evolved and changed, and if so, how? And what does it take to be a more purposeful leader? Like, what does that, you as a leader of your company, what can we do better for our teams, learning from what we've been through over the last 2.5 years?
I'm going to answer it by saying what's the biggest risk I see. And right now, if you take the 125 million full-time workers in America, only 30% are engaged. Not satisfied, but engaged. They feel good about the mission, the purpose, and all that. That's ticking down right now. You guys, if that's like a precursor to the Dow. And it also talks about productivity of individuals. Economists call productivity GDP divided by the population and all that. You guys, that's been ticking down even before. It's like the other global warming. It's not a good number. It means that we don't buy and sell as much stuff to each other as we used to in the old days. I think, Nandika, that we're at risk of engaged employees becoming more like gig employees. And I think leaders are going to really have to work. You know, if you and I got to know each other over Zoom, I guess which we did, you know, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression, and I think a lot of things can go wrong. But I think and you see what happens is employees know the customers better than the CEO and the board. And boy, you get this is a good thing for everybody with the S. You let the engaged employees start to fall off and you got customers falling off. Nothing's closer to cash flow than customers. So it's very, very serious. It's not just like, oh, the employees don't have high well-being and all of that. No, 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 your whole customer base is falling apart, your stock price and all that. But I think leaders had better really take their game up on maximizing potential of individuals. And that's actually, they want to develop.
Right. Well, Eric, you get the last word.
Yeah, so I'll say we had a lunch in our office about 2 months ago, and there was this employee who I'd not met before, and I went over and I said hello, and he was looking around and he said, "Wow, this is nice." I go, "You like the office?" He goes, "Yeah, first time in the office." I go, "Oh, great. Did you just how long have you been at the company?" And he said, "Oh, about a year." He goes, "But Eric, this is my first time in any office." Not just in our office. He goes, "I've never been in an office." And that is a wholly different challenge for a CEO. And you need to think differently. First of all, this notion of the 20th century command control CEO, that's out the door. I mean, don't even think about that. You need to think about your employee. You need to think about what your employees are going through. You need to think about the empathy, as you talked about, the work-life balance. Why, what is going on with one's family? How do you sort of create a new culture today? And that's absolutely right. I mean, you're dependent upon your employees for the work they do, for their relationships, for their ability to drive the company, bringing people together, teaching employees in a very different way. I had the experience during COVID. It's not anything ground shaking in Washington, D.C. I was serving in public service. I was running the New York State economy on the front lines of COVID. You saw the inequities that we have in society. You saw the health inequities. You saw the economic inequities. You saw the social justice inequities. As CEOs, you need to learn from what we've experienced from the last 2 years, because that is affecting everybody's behavior, and in different ways.
Thank you. Please join me in thanking Jim and Eric. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was so great. Thank you. That was so good.
That's great. Good to see you.
Thank you.